They never taught you how wealth really works. They taught you how to obey, how to memorize, how to stay in line, but not how to build, not how to think independently, not how to control your future, and definitely not how to create wealth from nothing. They trained you for jobs, for paychecks, for good enough. But you were not born for average. You were not built for survival mode. You were born to own, to design, to scale a life you don't need a vacation from. And deep down, you already know that. That's why you're here. You've had enough. Enough of living on someone else's clock. Enough of trading your time for pennies while billion-dollar ideas sit in your head. Enough of watching others rise while you repeat the same year over and over again and call it experience. And you want freedom, but freedom has a formula. Not luck, not lottery, a system, and if you don't build one, you'll end up a cog inside someone else's. That's what they never told you. Wealth is not an outcome. It's a system of thoughts, habits, structures, and beliefs running quietly in the background of your life, either by default or by design. The wealthy don't work harder. They don't pray longer. They think in systems, and if you want to join them, it starts here, not with a spreadsheet, not with a side hustle, not with some flashy investment tip. It starts with your mindset, because your money will never grow bigger than your psychology. You want to be rich, you better start thinking like someone who already is. You think it's about how much you make. It's not. It's about how you think when no one's watching, how you respond when life punches you in the teeth, how you handle boredom, failure, jealousy, pressure, rejection, and silence. The wealthy don't chase money, they chase mastery, and money follows mastery. That's why you can see two people with the same degree, same job, same tools, and one builds an empire while the other barely scrapes by. The difference? Mental structure. One has a fragile mind, always reacting, doubting, hesitating. The other, ruthless, clear, focused, unshakable. They don't wait for motivation. They move through discipline. They don't ask, what if I fail? They ask, what if I never try? That shift right there is where your personal wealth system begins. But don't confuse hype for hunger. This isn't about slogans. This is about standards. You have to get sick of being average. You have to become allergic to your own excuses. You have to stop looking at your bank account like a verdict and start looking at it like a reflection of how you think, how you move, and what you've accepted. Your income is not your identity, it's your feedback. And once you realize that, everything changes. You stop blaming, you stop waiting, you stop pretending that someone is coming to rescue you. No one is coming, and that's the best news you'll ever hear, because now it's on you. You get to build, you get to decide, you get to rewire everything they told you was just the way it is. You don't need another job. You need a mission. You don't need more tasks. You need a target. And once you have that target, once the fog lifts, your brain starts aligning. You wake up sharper. You move faster. You stop negotiating with your weaknesses. That's the beginning of your system. It's not built overnight. It's built in the tiny, invisible, unsexy moments when no one is watching. When you choose to read instead of scroll. When you invest instead of consume. When you say no to short-term pleasure and yes to long-term power. This is the mindset phase, and most people never pass it. You know, they dabble. They watch a few videos, they feel inspired for a day, and then back to sleepwalking. But not you. You're still here. You're not just looking for motivation. You're building momentum. So let me ask you a question, and answer it like your life depends on it, because it does. What would your life look like if you stopped making decisions based on fear, not logic, not clarity? Fear of judgment, fear of failing, fear of standing out, fear of outgrowing your circle, fear of success, because it means you can't play small anymore. You know what fear really is? It's your current identity, clinging to the edge of who you used to be, desperately trying not to drown in who you're becoming. But let it go. Let the old version die, the broke version, the scattered version, the always waiting, always wondering, never moving version. Let it all go, because what's coming is unstoppable. You've burned the old identity, you've stared your fear in the face and didn't blink. Now it's time to build something that lasts, because if mindset is the engine, clarity is the steering wheel. And without clarity, power becomes noise, movement becomes chaos, ambition becomes burnout. Yeah, you want to build wealth? Then get crystal clear on what wealth means to you. Not to your parents, not to Instagram, not to some guy flexing rented cars in Dubai. What does wealth mean to you? Freedom, time, impact, legacy. Because until that word has your definition, you'll keep chasing someone else's finish line. The wealthy don't work harder because they want more. They work smarter because they know exactly what they're after. They don't hustle in every direction. They build in one. That's why your calendar is more important than your vision board. Because dreams without time blocks are just decorated lies. So write it down, make it specific, make it real. And once you do, structure it. Because here's the truth, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Look at your average Tuesday. That's your future, not your resolutions, not your vision for 5 years out, just your Tuesday. Is it chaotic, reactive, packed with other people's priorities? Then don't be surprised if your wealth stays stuck in theory. The wealthy design systems that don't rely on emotion. They don't leave their success to how they feel that day. They automate what matters. They measure what matters. They repeat what matters. They turn their routines into rituals, their discipline into default, their environment into armor. While others are motivated by convenience, they are moved by commitment. And commitment doesn't care how you feel. It only cares what you said you'd do. So build a schedule that reflects your values, not your feelings. Build habits that hold you up when your motivation sits down. Build boundaries so sharp that laziness cuts itself trying to get in. This is not about doing more. It's about doing what actually builds. You don't need more hustle. You need better hierarchy. 1 hour of strategy beats 10 hours of busyness. 10 minutes of clarity beats a whole day of distraction. That's why the most powerful wealth builders in history, Carnegie, Rockefeller, Ford, they didn't just work. They structured, they systemized, they built machines, not just factories, mental factories. Because wealth isn't earned once, it's compounded. Every choice is a vote. Every repetition is a deposit. Every act of discipline is a brick in your new identity. So when you wake up tomorrow and feel tired, when the bed feels warm and the world feels heavy, you don't ask, do I feel like showing up? You say, it's already decided. Discipline isn't restriction. It's freedom in disguise. The freedom to trust yourself, the freedom to scale your life without burning out, the freedom to walk into chaos and still move with clarity. And it's not built in one dramatic leap. It's built in tiny wars every day. When you eat what fuels you instead of what soothes you. When you work when no one is clapping. When you say no to quick hits and yes to long games. That's how wealth is built. Not through one big win, but through thousands of micro decisions no one will ever see. And that's where most people fail. They want the mansion, but they reject the math. They want the income, but despise the input. They want the trophy, but skip the training. But not you. You're starting to understand something most never will. Wealth is not about being busy. It's about being intentional. It's not about doing more. It's about doing what matters most, more consistently than anyone else is willing to, and that's the secret. Consistency outperforms intensity. You don't need to go hard once. You need to go steady, relentlessly, unshakably, until it's yours. You've mapped your target, you've built your system, but none of it matters if you don't pull the trigger. Execution is the separator. It's the line between the dreamers and the doers, between the people who post goals and the ones who hit them. You can plan all day. You can journal, visualize, manifest. But at some point you have to move, not perfectly, not later. Now, because waiting is a silent killer. Every hour you hesitate is compounding interest in the bank account of regret. And that's why the wealthy don't hesitate. They don't overthink. They don't debate their own greatness. They act even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable, because comfort is the enemy of momentum. It whispers, you've done enough. It seduces you into thinking is progress, but thinking doesn't pay. Execution does. So stop preparing and start producing. Stop consuming and start creating. Stop asking for permission and start building without applause. You want to know the real reason most people stay stuck? It's not fear of failure, it's fear of being seen failing. They'd rather look successful than actually be it. They'd rather post about the work than do the work. They chase likes instead of leverage, attention instead of assets. But the wealthy know the truth. Your results speak louder than your aesthetic. So stop outsourcing your power to how things look. Focus on how things move. And here's what they don't teach in school. You don't need 100% clarity to begin. You need 10% courage and 90% follow through. Progress is messy. Execution is clumsy. You will suck in the beginning. But that's the point, because if you wait to be great, you'll never start. But if you start, you'll become great. That's how empires are built, brick by sloppy brick. And you better fall in love with the process, because results don't show up on day one. They hide behind repetition, behind your 50th post that got no likes, behind your third failed business, behind your 100th cold email, behind your resilience. And this is where your energy system matters more than your to-do list, because execution without energy is just burnout. Anyone can sprint, but wealth is built in marathons, and you can't win marathons if you're constantly crashing. So stop chasing time management. Start mastering energy management. What fuels you? What drains you? Who around you multiplies your vision and who leaks it? The wealthy don't just protect their schedule, they protect their state. They design their days around their peak energy. They say no more than they say yes. They eliminate friction, they optimize inputs, they guard their mornings like gold, they recover as hard as they work, because they understand something the world ignores. You don't rise by grinding harder. You rise by executing smarter. 1 hour of deep, aligned, high-voltage execution is worth 10 hours of reactive, distracted output. So build your day around output, not activity. Don't check off boxes, move the needle. Don't just stay busy, stay effective. Ask yourself every night, did I build today? Not, did I get through it? Not, was I productive? But did I build something real? A skill, a connection, a system, a result, because that's how you win. Not in theory, not in intention, in execution. Relentless, repeatable, intelligent execution. And the world, it doesn't reward thought. It rewards throughput. So don't just be inspired, be dangerous, be consistent, be efficient, be willing to show up before you feel ready, and keep showing up until the world feels your weight. Everything is easy until it isn't. You build the vision, you map the system, you execute like fire, and then life shows up. It throws a punch you didn't see coming, a betrayal, a failure, a downturn, a week that wrecks your momentum, a storm that tests every inch of your foundation. And this right here is where most people fold, because they didn't build for pressure. They built for progress. They only knew how to move when it was easy, only knew how to act when things went according to plan. But plans are paper. Life is a storm. The wealthy don't rise because they avoid pressure. They rise because they're built to withstand it. They don't just build systems for performance. They build systems for resilience, because they understand it's not your talent that carries you through hell. It's your tolerance, your emotional fitness, your capacity to adapt when the rules change. Look at Lincoln, look at Oprah, look at Disney. They didn't win because it was smooth. They won because they learned to dance with chaos. You want to be unstoppable? Then you better learn how to take hits without losing your identity. You better learn how to bend without breaking. You better learn how to fall without forgetting who the hell you are. And that means building a resilience system, a mental fortress, not made of fake positivity, not some everything happens for a reason bumper sticker. Real power, real tools, real depth Here's what the wealthy know. Your response is your wealth, not your outcome, not your plan, not your income, your response. You get rejected. Do you collapse or recalibrate? You lose money. Do you panic or problem solve? You fail publicly. Do you disappear or double down? Because the way you respond is the difference between ending your chapter or starting your empire. And resilience isn't about suppressing pain. It's about transforming it, turning emotion into fuel, turning embarrassment into evolution, turning pressure into precision. But you can't do that if your nervous system is fried. You can't do that if every setback triggers an identity crisis. You can't do that if you never built emotional structure. So build it. Train your emotional muscles like your financial ones. Start with stillness. Not silence, stillness, the ability to be centered in the middle of noise, the ability to stay grounded when chaos is screaming, the ability to breathe through discomfort and say, I'm still here, let's go again. Because the average person hits friction and runs. The wealthy hit friction and sharpen. They see adversity not as the end, but as feedback, as resistance training, as a pressure test for their next level. You want that next level? Then earn it in how you manage energy when you're exhausted, in how you lead when you're doubted, in how you focus when no one claps, and how you adapt when everything breaks. Because it will break. You will lose money. You will get ghosted. You will feel forgotten. You will question your worth. You will ask, is this even working? And if your answer is always tied to results, you'll quit. But if your answer is tied to who you're becoming, you'll keep showing up louder, sharper, hungrier, more dangerous. That's the mindset that builds dynasties. Not I'll try, not I hope, but I am the kind of person who does not stop. You've learned how to take the hit. Now it's time to ask the question most never ask. What are you building all this for? Because speed without direction is just destruction in disguise. You can hustle your whole life and still end up nowhere. You can master discipline and execution, but if you're climbing the wrong ladder, you'll only get to the wrong place faster. And that's what separates the rich from the truly wealthy. The rich chase targets. The wealthy chase, meaning they don't just build assets, they build alignment. They don't just ask, how much can I earn? They ask, why do I need this life in the first place? Because when your purpose is shallow, your effort will be temporary. But when your purpose is surgical, emotional, unshakable, you become lethal. You stop needing motivation. You stop begging for momentum. You move because you're called, because the future you've seen in your mind is louder than any distraction. That's why the most dangerous people on this planet are not the smartest. They're the ones with clarity, with conviction, with a reason to rise that doesn't fade with mood swings. And here's what most people get wrong. Purpose isn't found. Purpose is built. You build it in repetition, in showing up when no one claps, in doing it wrong until you finally do it right, in failing, refining, and staying in the room longer than those who left when it got boring. Purpose isn't a lightning strike, it's a furnace, and you feed it by aligning your work with your truth, not just your skills, but your soul. Because anyone can work hard, but when your work is aligned with your reason for being, it becomes art. So ask yourself, what makes you furious? What breaks your heart? What could you talk about for hours without needing a script? That's not just emotion, that's direction. That's the blueprint of the empire you haven't built yet. And if you want to build a wealth system that lasts, it needs to be rooted in something that outlives your attention span. That's why long-term thinking isn't optional, it's non-negotiable, because the average person trades legacy for likes, trades vision for validation. They want everything now, but wealth isn't built in microwave minutes. It's built in seasons, in years of positioning before you explode, in boring reps while no one's watching, in sacrifice, in strategy, in structure that scales. You know why most people stay broke? Because they quit the moment short-term results disappear. But the wealthy, they're addicted to the long game. They plant seeds every day, some that won't bear fruit for 10 years. They think in decades. They invest in relationships. They build reputations like fortresses. They leave money on the table now to own the whole table later. You want real wealth? Stop playing checkers with people who are playing chess. Start thinking in systems, not sprints. Start building ecosystems, not exits. Start solving problems at scale, not chasing applause in small rooms. Because the bigger your vision, the more precise your system must become. No fluff, no winging it, just structure, just clarity, just an unbreakable obsession with the next 10, 20, 30 years, because that's where legacy lives. Not in what you built, but in what keeps working when you're gone. Every system eventually reaches a point where strategy isn't enough. You've done the planning, you've executed, you've survived the storm, you have a vision. But now it's you versus you. Because the biggest enemy of your wealth system isn't failure, it's friction, the subtle drag of unconscious choices, the slow leak of willpower, the invisible cost of saying yes when you should have said hell no. At this level, success is no longer about doing more, it's about doing less but better. This is where self-control stops being a virtue and becomes a weapon. You can't build long-term wealth with a short-term attention span. You can't protect your energy if you keep handing it to dopamine dealers in your pocket. You can't scale anything if your will is weak. So you need to start treating discipline like currency. Where does it go? Who do you spend it on? What drains it? What multiplies it? Because every decision you make is either compounding your freedom or financing your destruction. And here's the truth no one wants to admit. Success is boring. It's not fireworks. It's filters. It's saying no over and over when yes is easier. It's the 93rd time you do the same rep, the same task, the same routine, with zero applause and zero dopamine. But that's where wealth hides, in the dull, in the repetition, in the obsession with consistency over creativity. Not because creativity isn't powerful, but George Das, because consistency compounds. The average person thinks discipline is restriction. The wealthy understand it's the gateway drug to power, because when you master your choices, you start controlling your trajectory. And trajectory always beats intensity. Anyone can go hard for a weekend. Anyone can sprint when life is good. But real wealth comes from those who learn how to manage themselves when no one's watching, when no one's asking, when no one's rewarding, when the only voice you hear is the one saying, we're still not done. That voice, that's who you become, not the voice in public, the voice in private. And to protect that voice, you must learn to master trade-offs. You can't have everything. You can't do everything. You can't build a system that scales if you keep paying for convenience with your future. So decide, do you want stimulation or sovereignty, comfort or control, distraction or dominion? Because everything has a price. The only question is, are you paying it in advance or with regret? And that's where the wealthy separate from the obsessed. The obsessed want to win. The wealthy want to last. So they don't just build wealth systems, they build life systems. They don't just plan income, they plan recovery. They design mornings, they structure input. They engineer boundaries that keep low-value chaos out. They protect their state like billionaires protect assets, because they understand your mental real estate is more valuable than your portfolio. You can lose money and get it back, but lose your clarity, lose your ability to focus, to regulate, to decide, you've lost the core engine. So build around that. Structure your world to make good decisions automatic. Turn off friction, turn up clarity, and never outsource your habits to chance again. Because the person with the strongest system wins, not the most hype, not the loudest voice, the most structured life, not rigid, not lifeless, but aligned, precise, unapologetically intentional. That's not control freak energy. That's freedom freak energy. You don't want to be busy. You want to be bulletproof. You don't want more noise. You want signal. You want power that lasts longer than adrenaline. And that power comes from structure, from choices aligned with the life you said you were building, from a daily system that removes doubt before doubt has a chance to speak. That is how you take discipline and turn it into destiny. You can build the best mindset, craft the sharpest schedule, design the most elite system. But if the people around you are chaotic, your empire will bleed from the inside because your system is only as stable as the energy it allows in. And most people never get this right. And they think relationships are about comfort, familiarity, loyalty. I've known them forever. But wealth doesn't care how long you've known someone. It cares what they do to your trajectory. Every person in your life is doing one of two things: compounding your focus or leaking it, multiplying your energy or taxing it, calling you into discipline or enabling your destruction. You think you're tired? You might just be surrounded by the wrong voices, because the truth is, people are environments. You don't just live with them, you absorb them. You absorb their expectations, their emotional chaos, their relationship with money, their standards for what's normal. And if you don't build your social ecosystem intentionally, it will default to whatever is comfortable, and comfortable is almost never wealthy. That's why the wealthy are ruthless about proximity. They understand that social capital is a strategic asset, not popularity, not followers, but alignment, integrity, precision. The right relationship at the right time can change your net worth by 6 figures in a sentence. The wrong relationship can derail your momentum by 6 months with one text. That's why you need filters, not walls, but gates, strong gates, strategic gates. Who gets access to your thoughts? Who gets proximity to your time? Who gets to speak into your dreams? Because influence is subtle. You don't notice it until you're off track, until your vision starts shrinking, until you start making excuses that sound suspiciously like your circle. And here's what the wealthy do differently. They curate conversations. They ask better questions. They don't waste mental bandwidth debating their values with people who haven't built anything. They don't explain ambition to those addicted to mediocrity. They don't apologize, wild arts, for evolving past people who refuse to grow, because they're not chasing approval. They're chasing alignment. You don't need more friends. You need better frameworks for who qualifies as one. So write it down. What kind of energy do you want to multiply in your life? What kind of ideas do you want to normalize? What kind of feedback do you want when you're tired, tempted, or trapped? Then go find those people and become one of them yourself. Because the highest form of relationship isn't comfort, it's accountability, it's alignment, it's clarity. It's people who look you in the eye when you're slacking and say, you said you wanted this, now act like it's on steroids. Those are the people who deserve your time, your access, your collaboration. Everyone else, they get love from a distance, not judgment, just boundaries. And when your boundaries are clean, your energy skyrockets, because you're no longer burning willpower managing people who don't match your direction. And that's what frees you up to build, to scale, to create from a place of wholeness instead of performance. Because wealth isn't just what you build, it's who you become while building it. And you become that person faster, more powerfully, and more sustainably when you're surrounded by those who make your greatness normal, not shocking, not intimidating, but expected. And that shift from tolerated to expected is the moment your entire system accelerates. You've mastered the inner game. You've built the structures. You've faced the storms. You've chosen your people. But now comes the question that rewrites everything. What are you going to do with all this power? Because at some point, wealth stops being about accumulation and starts becoming about amplification. You've built the machine. Now what will it make? Because the truth is, money without meaning is just a prison with soft pillows. You don't want just comfort. You want consequence. You want your existence to echo, not because of ego, but because deep down, you weren't born to just make a living. You were born to make a dent. That's why the real wealth isn't just passive income. It's active influence. It's the ability to use your thoughts, your words, your creations to shift lives, shift industries, shift legacies. Because wealth with no impact is just expensive isolation. But wealth with vision, that's empire. And the tool of that empire, The most underused, underestimated, unlimited tool in your system is your creativity, not art. Creation, the ability to turn thoughts into tools, ideas into impact, problems into products, struggles into systems, pain into blueprints, experience into value. The average person consumes, the wealthy convert. They don't just learn, they teach, they don't just heal, they translate the healing into frameworks. They don't just win, they codify the win so others can replicate it. That's why your story matters. Not because it's dramatic, but because it's real. Because someone out there is drowning in what you've already survived. And your system, your voice, your brand, your insight is the rope they've been waiting on. That's the power of impact capital. It compounds in hearts, not charts. It changes minds. It lifts generations. It gives your money a mission. Because money with no mission is meaningless. But when you point your system at service, everything scales. Trust, brand, community, longevity, peace, and all of it. Every ripple of legacy begins with your character, not your reputation, not your brand voice, not your curated image, but your internal assets. Your integrity, your truth, your alignment, the values you protect when no one is watching, the decisions you make when no one will ever know, the self-respect you hold when no one is there to validate you, because your system won't just scale your income, it will scale you. Whatever's inside will grow. So make sure what's inside is strong enough to handle what's coming. You want to know the secret of every real empire builder? They don't just build big, they build deep, deep roots, deep standards, deep foundations that don't shake when storms come. That's how you build something that doesn't just flash, but lasts. That's how you move from success to significance. You stop chasing more and start building meaningfully. You stop trying to look rich and start becoming undeniable. You stop performing for the world and start serving it. Not from a place of obligation, but from overflow. Because when you've done the real work, when your system is alive, when your actions are aligned, and your character is clean, you don't have to chase impact. You become it. And that is real wealth.